Jeff, you're on the show in a bit of a different capacity today because there is a story that's out there. It made huge national news last week as we're watching all of these presidential races unfold. And the headline in Politico, among many other places, Bachmann paid New Hampshire staffers quit en masse. Is it true?
Yeah.
Did it happen?
Yeah, it did happen, and I think that it's unfortunate the way the story rolled out. And I just want to be clear. I don't speak for the whole team on a lot of the elements, but
Sure.
I do speak for the team in regards as to the reasons why they all left. But they did all leave. They all left at various stages over that week. I think that what's really important to note is that we did make efforts to let the national team know that this was happening, and I was baffled by some of the reports over the weekend that we made no attempt to let them know, and I think that's part of the problem. That that the left hand isn't telling the right hand what's going on.
Yeah, that seemed to be the big storyline, was the fact that, first of all, candidate Bachmann, Representative Michelle Bachmann, was surprised by it, but then the rest of the national team also said this whole thing came as a shock. I have no idea why this happened. That storyline's not true.
It's not true. And the thing is that some people may not have been informed or feel they were informed in the way that they felt they should have been informed. There was a big trust issue here. I would have preferred to talk to Michelle directly. That wasn't being made possible to us. I think that after the trip for the New Hampshire debate, I had made my decision early on in that trip, after several incidents had happened, that I was going to probably be leaving in any kind of capacity. And, basically I let a person inside the campaign know that I trusted very much that I was leaving, that it was up to them to reach out to the additional members of the team. That statement was remade to a senior level member of the national campaign that they needed to reach out to the rest of the New Hampshire team, and they never did.
Wow.
And so the rest of the New Hampshire team just felt, okay, then what we thought was the issue is the issue still, and we're going to move on.
That's the thing. When you're working on a campaign, you're busting your hump, you're going around the state, you're putting out fires, which Michelle Bachmann had a number of fires to put out in New Hampshire, including the fact she hadn't been here for a few months, and that riled up a lot of people. Honestly, and honestly, and you had to go put those fires out, and then what ends up happening? The national team says, the heck with you. We're not even going to respond to your phone calls. We won't let you talk to the candidate.
Well, and that was systemic all the way back from June. There have been a lot of things that have been going on in this campaign since June, since the national team became embedded even deeper. People forget the New Hampshire team was really the first team hired. We had been with Michelle early on, so we had some understanding of how we thought the rest of the campaign was going to roll out. All that was dismissed very quickly, and the synergy was never there. And I don't want to sound like a business person, but when you don't have synergy, is there any surprise that suddenly some people might not know that there's a problem? But the bigger issue here too is that this is an epidemic, Paul. National campaigns are coming into New Hampshire. I've talked to other state teams that are starting to feel alienated from their candidate, and there's been this shift away from letting New Hampshire teams show them how to win New Hampshire.
I mean, and that seems to, you're right, it seems to be systemic. Is that just because we have these national primaries basically in the form of debates? I mean, debates have been going on for a very long time, but now they've become spectacles, and they've become what all the candidates really care about, and they're looking at national polls, whereas that sort of retail, New Hampshire-type state campaigning is starting to fizzle and become more of the background, and the national team is starting to take a bigger presence because of that and the internet as well, providing anytime a candidate says something at a Laconia fair, what ends up happening is it goes on YouTube and 10 million people see it.
Well, absolutely. I think that's one large part of it. I think the other element too is that egos cannot be dismissed in this, and egos. I can tell you almost every mistake made by almost every major candidate in this race is a result of someone's ego. And when that becomes the issue of what helps drive a campaign, is there any wonder that it ends up faltering the way that it does? The New Hampshire team never had an ego. I mean, this team was very diligent, very quiet. We tried to stay away from the press. We didn't. I mean, that's been a complaint that many of the press people have made towards us. It wasn't our job to talk to the press, though. It was our job to put our feet to the ground and try to make something happen.
Right.
And so I think part of your element. But the other thing, too, Paul, is that you bring up a really good case. And, we've seen this with trying to secure the First of the Nation primary. Whenever they do come into New Hampshire, they want the small, friendly New Hampshire events.
Yeah.
They want the country stores. They want the small town halls. So they must see some value in that kind of presentation in a presidential campaign.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? Honestly, if nothing else, it gets them, first of all, it gets them some initial attention if they're campaigning here, both nationally and statewide, but also it gets them a little bit of experience under their belts. Gets them some experience that they're doing. I think I've heard that from every campaign so far. People who have gone through this before, from the Romney campaign to the Paul campaign to Newt Gingrich's campaign, says, the best part about New Hampshire is it gets the candidate ready to go on to do, other campaigning, go into other states. And this is how you interact with human beings, not in Washington and television cameras.
Well, absolutely. Well said. I mean, I think that's the beauty you've seen coming from initially an outsider. Now you're in New Hampshire, right? We love you're part of New Hampshire now, Paul. And, you're running around and you see how campaigns get rejuvenated every time they go to an event in New Hampshire, because that's who we are.
Right.
And I think that, this has it's just so disheartening as to the way that the national team decided to let this roll out and not involve the New Hampshire team in really these major strategic decisions that we could have been beneficial for them. We had no clue what their policy or what their process was towards New Hampshire until we woke up one day and had the epiphany after reading so many news headlines. Guess what, guys? We don't think she cares about New Hampshire.
Right.
And I don't think it's the candidate's decision. It was some senior member within the campaign that said that's not the issue we want to worry about right now.
Unbelievable. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for the insight. You're going to hear this interview again. It'll be our web feature of the day on WGIRAM.com and 96.7thewave.com. Jeff Chidester, appreciate the time.